Good afternoon. Let's for a moment consider how we observe things. Try and think back for just a moment. How did you experience your holidays? To what you felt, what you saw, what you heard, and what you smelled. Do you ever get that feeling that everything seems to be a little different and just a little bit more clearly, just a little bit more edgy when you are in an unfamiliar place? A little while ago, I was on holiday on the north coast of Brittany. The tidal differences there are enormous. It varies anything from 6 to 14 meters. We rented a small place over there, which was on the border of the beach, and as the French say, les pieds dans l'eau, with your feet in the water, something we are scared of in the Netherlands. While there in Brittany, I was very aware of the tidal circumstances. The position of the tide, I heard it. This continuous sound of the waves rolling in and retracting towards or from the shore. And from the intensity of the sound, you could make out exactly what period in the tide it was. When it was coming in, the sound was very intense. It was breaking on the rocks just in front of the beach. And was going out, it slowly silenced, and the noise was lessened. By day, you could clearly see the low or the high water mark on the beach, and at night, the breaks of the waves were enlightened by the lighthouse. When the wind blows towards the shore, together with the incoming tide, you could feel a soft salt spray on your skin. And at high tide, you could smell the saltiness of the water, and at low tide, the sweetness of the algae. Now, why is using your senses so important? In the example of Brittany, I just gave you nature. Nature dictated our rhythm of life. It dictated our walks. It dictated whether we could swim, yes or no. It dictated where we could make a passage which was only accessible at low tide. But in our daily lives, this is not a natural given fact. No time for reflection, too much protocol, procedures, regulations, and too many other small details which derive ourselves from our own observations. It often seems that as if history doesn't go back 2.5 minutes to the last tweet we have received. And the contents is not less depressing because it doesn't contain more than 140 symbols. Rules, procedures, and protocols, with or without any statistics to back them up, these legitimize our actions and they suppress our own observations. This limits our independent way of thinking, and with it is taking our own responsibility. Between our mental image of reality and reality itself, there is an enormous gap. Now, once back in Rotterdam, I noticed that my sense of observations, of which I've been so aware in Brittany, slowly faded away. Now, if you compare the single issue of just the tidal movements during the 24 hours of a day, compared with the multi-issues in Rotterdam, the complexity of the city calls, if all things, for being very attentive, and very attentive observers. And I've made some observations on Rotterdam, which I would like to share with you. Rotterdam is a very remarkable city, one of the most remarkable cities in Western Europe. During the Second World War, the very heart of the city was bombed out. Afterwards, reconstruction was aimed at very iconic landmarks such as the Central Station, the Market Hall, and the building which is named after the city, the Rotterdam. At the end of the 19th century, the port expanded to the southern bank of the river. At the end of the 20th century, we made a bridge, a virtual bridge, called the Erasmus Bridge, to develop furthermore the expansion of the southern bank. The bridge, which you can see there on your left side, asked for an investment of about 300 million euros, and it has long been discussed whether it should be there, yes or no. It yielded, although, an additional investment of about $4 billion, or 4 billion euros, we're talking euros here. The development of the city and the growth of the harbor brought 174 different nationalities to Rotterdam. Two nationalities less than Antwerp, I just recently learned. And the power of this city is in the diversity of its community. I suggest you go for a walk on the Afrikaner Markt on the south bank. There you can find literally everything which you can think of. You can smell, you can hear, you can see, and you can touch the diversity of the Rotterdam community. Rotterdam is a breeding ground for different social, economic, and cultural innovations. This is partly the result of how this diversity has been handled politically and administratively, namely very down to earth and innovative on a world scale, certainly when you compare this with countries around us. Well, these 174 nationalities are the good reason for starting up Renovation 2.0. The start is made up by building the second virtual bridge. A virtual, this one, a bridge that is going to reveal the potential of these 174 nationalities, connecting within the Rotterdam society. The young Rotterdam writer, Raoul de Jong, said recently, everything and every building is made into an icon, except for the iconic. The real iconic in Rotterdam is the diversity of its community. Although, as we all know, following the recent discussions, that diversity is often regarded as a problem. And diversity is of all times. Character, which is a famous book in Dutch literature, written by the Dutch writer Bordewijk, and Dutch literature at its best, is set in Rotterdam. A quote from the main character called Katterdruf, which said, "Amsterdam is our national city, but Rotterdam is our international city. And I have a feeling for the international, which is why I feel for the city." She got this mark, the city, from the sea, for the sea moves across the borders, and the sea is the only real cosmopolitan in the world. And he said that in 1938, or he wrote that in 1938. The power of Rotterdam is a deep connection with the rest of the world. And it's all about space. Space like the river creates and the opening to the sea. And it's about taking that space and having that space, literally and physically. That space is present, like I said, in the landscape. And it has been an influence on the character of the town, a port with an orientation to the world and with an outward-bound view. It makes Rotterdam into a city that motivates you, that you're given the urge to do something, which is in this verb quite literally, no words but deeds, but reflecting sometimes makes part of the deed. It is a city of extremes as well. Rotterdam is sometimes of frail old age and a lot of young energy. It's the dynamics, in fact, of the metropole. And it's between those opposites of these differences. There is a free and a defined city, and there is a current of energy. Have you ever seen a battery with 2 plus or 2 minus poles? There is no current in between. So you always need these contrasts to have the free flow of energy. And that exactly, the dynamic of a metropole creates the power of Rotterdam. Watch me closely when I fill with my papers, because I'm asking you a question afterwards. Finally, I would like to call on each of you to develop your own skills of observation and to use them in your very and everyday life. And once you're good at this, share these observations with your neighbors and your friends. Together you will be able to recognize those situations where you can make a difference. Too often, our reality is determined by a mental image. As images, we make up figures, protocols, and procedures that are removed from our every day-to-day reality. Marcel Proust, the famous French writer, wrote, "The true exploration is not a search for new landscapes, but to observe with new eyes." Your own observations makes the gap between image and reality smaller, and it stimulates independent thinking. Make a start today. Let this be the first day of your holiday in Rotterdam. Try to step out into your city with open eyes and a fresh mind. Not today alone, but each and every day. And if you do that, you'll find that this unique diversity of Rotterdam has yet another side to it. The Rotterdam poet and writer Rien Vroegindeweij puts into his word in the best possible way in a brand new light sculpture in the Tienthovenstraat at the Westkruiskade. If everyone comes from somewhere else, no one is a stranger. And my question to the audience is, how many pages did I throw away? You can see it.